all fans of Formula One, you are being lied to. You've been duped into thinking that this could be true.
The regulation, as I said, they may allow the lap cars through. It's not mandatory, as I pointed out, but as you point out, Crofty, there'd be no racing laps if they let the lap cars through, because I think the safety car will come in at the end of this lap, and there will be one racing lap.
The fundamental point of that rule is to make sure that they don't get in the way of a great duel towards the end of a Grand Prix, and that's only happened, didn't it?
These are categorically lies, and here is going to be proof, both in terms of the regulations and a specific example which will clearly evidence the truth. The fundamentals of sporting competition are that the rules and regulations are applied uniformly to all competitors. Hence the real fundamental reason why they always have to release the lapped cars and allow at least one full safety car lap is so that the introduction of the safety car subjects all competitors to the same consequence. That being, if racing resumes, the gaps between all competitors will be nullified and racing resumes in the correct race order with all cars pretty much nose to tail. That is the fundamental principle of sporting fairness as dictated by the FIA Sporting Code. It cannot be that some competitors get to close up on the cars in front of them by 30 seconds to a minute, while the cars behind them get dropped back and lose ground by over 1 minute 30 seconds, just due to the way a safety incident is dealt with. That is totally against the fundamental principles of sporting fairness, totally against the FIA's own sporting code, which underpins all motorsport. And here's how that happened in Abu Dhabi. Now let's be clear, sporting rules and regulations are grounded in context. They are not just random words and sentences with various interpretations which have no meaning. They all relate to scenarios which take place in the sport. Context. This is the moment that Latifi crashed in Abu Dhabi. Note where Lewis Hamilton is in between turn 8 and 9. Verstappen is at turn 6 in that cluster. Third position is Perez at turn 3. They are the only three cars on that lead lap. Fourth position is Sainz, but Sainz is on his lap 52 at this moment, coming up to turn 13. The time difference between first and fourth at this stage is 68 seconds. Sainz is 68 seconds back from Hamilton. That's significant. Now look at the cars behind Sainz. There's Bottas immediately behind. Then you have Tsunoda and Gasly down at turn 9. Norris at turn 8. And then Alonso, Ocon, Ricciardo and Leclerc in that cluster between turn 7 and 6. And then along that top straight back towards turn 5 is Vettel and Stroll. The other runner that's cut adrift by 35 seconds is Mick Schumacher at this stage. But just taking those 10 runners back to Stroll, between Bottas and Stroll, those 10 competitors immediately behind Sainz are all within 46 seconds of Sainz. 10 competitors within 46 seconds of currently fourth position. Whereas fourth position is actually 68 seconds back from first. Also take note of this, which is key. Norris in 8th position is less than 12 seconds behind Gasly in 7th. He's closer to Gasly than Verstappen is to Hamilton. Now look at what happens. After circulating behind the safety car, we now arrive on lap 57. The cars have not been released. So the running order behind the safety car is Hamilton, and then the lapped cars of Norris, Alonso, Ocon, Leclerc, Vettel. Then Verstappen in second, then Ricciardo, Stroll. Then it's Sainz in third, Bottas in fourth, Mick Schumacher who's been lapped, Tsunoda and Gasly in fifth and sixth. So from previously being in a situation where there were 10 cars behind Sainz, and all 10 were within 46 seconds of him, there are now 7 of those cars that in that train are ahead of Sainz, but in actual fact they're a lap behind Sainz in the race. A lap takes about 1 minute 30, so them 7 cars are all now in effect 1 minute 30 seconds behind Sainz, when previously all of them were within 46 seconds of him. That situation cannot be allowed to happen. That is why the rules are written the way they are. That is why the sporting code is what it is. Verstappen is able to condense that 12-second deficit down to nothing. Sainz is allowed to condense what was a 68-second deficit to Hamilton, 56 seconds on Verstappen, down to nothing. Whilst at the same time, cars which were within 46 seconds of Sainz are now over 1 minute 30 seconds behind him. That is a completely invalid scenario, one which cannot be allowed to happen, and one which a safety incident cannot be allowed to cause. That is the purpose of the safety car rules. That is the only valid interpretation of the safety car rules. So any suggestion that the lapped cars can be left in situ and we can go racing again is totally invalid. The only discretion that the race director has is on the grounds of safety, and that being, if it is not safe to do so, you don't release the lapped cars. And if it's not safe to release the lapped cars, it certainly isn't safe to go racing. So anybody trying to suggest that them rules mean anything else other than that is completely and utterly wrong. In addition to this, look at the location of Norris. Look at the location of Gasly. Norris was less than 12 seconds behind Gasly. He was closer to Gasly than Verstappen was to Hamilton. Look at the gap between Hamilton and Verstappen. Look what Norris has to do to catch Gasly. Norris is now almost an entire lap behind Gasly, having previously been less than 12 seconds behind. That is why you cannot restart the race with lapped cars in situ. That is a prime example of why you just simply cannot do that. So not only is that proposal of being able to restart the race with lapped cars in situ completely invalid, what we then see as the restart situation of that final lap is completely invalid too. The order as they cross the line is 1st, 2nd, 12th, 13th, 3rd, 4th, 14th, 5th, 6th, and then about a minute behind up at turn 5, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. That is absolutely invalid. The only valid restart order is in the correct 1st through to 14th running order, and those gaps between all the competitors being roughly about the same, to restore sporting fairness to every single competitor, not have some make major gains and not allow many to be significantly disadvantaged due to that safety incident. So that is the purpose of the safety car rules. That is the purpose of doing the mandatory safety car lap after the lap that they are released on, in order to give those released cars the opportunity of making it around the track and rejoining the back of that safety car snake, in order that that race can be restarted with all the cars given the same sporting chance to compete at that restart. And I will now prove that with the FIA's rules, regulations and sporting code. So here goes. So many are now familiar with the sporting regulations, and these are the ones that were in existence at the time of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Many are familiar with the notion of Article 48.12 and 48.13, and I will come to them. And many are familiar with Article 15.3, the notion of the race director having overriding authority. I will come to that. The bit that nobody discusses is, look at Article 2, General Undertakings. Now let's come down to Article 2. So this is the list of the articles and the appendices. Regulations, number 1, they say the final text shall be in English, and the sporting regulations apply to the whole calendar year. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, General Undertaking. All drivers, competitors and officials participating in the championship undertake, on behalf of themselves, their employees, agents and suppliers, to observe all the provisions as supplemented or amended of the International Sporting Code, the Formula One technical regulations, the Formula One financial regulations, and the present sporting regulations, together referred to as the regulations. So, it is all in conjunction with the sporting code. Every single one of these regulations has to be applied with consideration to and in accordance with the sporting code. 2.2, let's just read through this just to show you. The championship and each of its events is governed by the FIA in accordance with the regulations, which we've just said are in accordance with the sporting code. Event means any event entered into the FIA Formula One Championship calendar for any year commencing 24 hours before P1 is scheduled, blah, blah, blah. So, it all is grounded in the context of the sporting code. So let's look at that sporting code. And here it is. Issued on the 1st of January 2021, applied to the 2021 season. So look at the top. You've got the left hand side of the screen where it's written in French, the right hand side of the screen written in English. Article 1, General Principles. This is the key. The general principles of and let's go back to it, the International Sporting Code. The general principles. So let's scroll down to it. Article 1, General Principles. Article 1.1, International Regulations of Motorsport. 1.1.1. The FIA shall be the sole international sporting authority entitled to make and enforce regulations based on the fundamental principles of safety and sporting fairness for the encouragement and control of automobile competitions and to organise FIA international championships. Sporting fairness. 1.1.2. The FIA shall be the final international court of appeal for the settlement of disputes arising therefrom, it being acknowledged that the Fédération Internationale de Motociclisme shall exercise the same powers insofar as vehicles with 1, 2 or 3 wheels are concerned. Okay, so it's just 4-wheeled vehicles that the FIA is concerned with. And 1.1.3, to the fullest extent permitted by applicable law, neither the FIA nor any of its officers, agents, employees, directors or officials shall be liable to any other party for any claim, cost, damage or loss resulting from any action, decision or omission by the FIA and its officers, agents, employees, directors or officials in connection with their duties, except for willful misconduct or fraud. We then proceed to Article 1.2, International Sporting Code, and this is extremely key. 1.2.1. So that the above powers may be exercised in a fair and equitable manner, the FIA has drawn up the International Sporting Code, which includes all appendices thereto. 1.2.2. The purpose of the code is to regulate, encourage and facilitate motorsport. 1.2.3. It will never be enforced so as to prevent or impede a competition or the participation of a competitor, save where the FIA concludes that this is necessary for the safe, fair or orderly conduct of motorsport. They are the FIA's own regulations, own rules, own international sporting code. Their own values, which all the regulations must be applied with regard to. So we now come down to Article 48 in the regulations, the safety car. There is no point in these regulations that state anything about not releasing the lapped cars. There is no point in any of these regulations that talk about on a wet day in Spa, you do something differently. This is what they say. Point 1. The FIA safety car will be driven by a safety car driver appointed by the FIA. Point 2. Prior to the pit lane opening for a reconnaissance lap, the safety car will leave the pit lane and take up position at the front of the grid. Point 3. The safety car may be brought into operation to neutralise a sprint qualifying session, race, or upon the order of the clerk of the course. You get the picture. Point 4. When the order is given to deploy the safety car, the message safety car deployed will be sent to all competitors. Point 5. No car may be driven unnecessarily slowly, erratically, or in a manner which can be deemed potentially dangerous. Point 6. The safety car will join the track with its orange lights illuminated and will do so regardless of where the leader is. Point 7. All competing cars must reduce speed and form up in line behind the safety car no more than 10 lengths apart. We'll carry on down to the ones that are going to be relevant. Point 8. With the exception of the cases listed under A to H below, no driver may overtake another car on track. Okay, so there's the 48.8 A to H. There you go. 48.9. When ordered to do so by the clerk of the course, the observer in the car will use a green light to signal to any cars in between it and the leader that they should pass. So this is if the safety car hasn't picked up the lead car. If it's picked up some other cars first, they can get released first. Okay? Point 10. 48.10. Except under Article 48.12 below, the safety car shall be used at least until the leader is behind it and all remaining cars are lined up behind him. Once behind the safety car, the leader must keep within 10 car lengths of it, except under Article 48.13. 48.11. Under certain circumstances, the clerk of the course may ask the cars and the safety car to use the pit lane. In these cases, a signal to use the pit lane will be displayed. Think Baku, before they then red flagged it because of the potential for an accident happening in the pit lane, because of the unpredictable nature of tyre blowouts in Baku 2021. So, here we go. This is the key and what has been argued about for Abu Dhabi. 48.12. If the clerk of the course considers it safe to do so, and the message lapped cars may now overtake has been sent to all competitors via the official messaging system, any cars that have been lapped by the leader will be required to pass the cars on the lead lap and the safety car. This will only apply to cars that were lapped at the time they crossed the line at the end of the lap, which they crossed the first safety car line for the second time after the safety car was deployed. Having overtaken the cars on the lead lap and the safety car, these cars should then proceed around the track at an appropriate speed without overtaking and make every effort to take up position at the back of the line of cars behind the safety car. Whilst they are overtaking, and in order to ensure that this may be carried out safely, the cars on the lead lap must always stay on racing line unless deviating from it is unavoidable. Unless the clerk of the course considers the presence of the safety car is still necessary, once the last lapped car has passed the leader, the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. In simple terms, that says all cars which have been lapped must be signalled past the safety car, and then an additional lap must be completed by that safety car, and the purpose of that is for those cars to be given the chance of rejoining the back of that safety car snake. It does not say anything else other than that. There is no possibility of resuming racing with lap cars in situ. There is no provision for a wet day in Spa generating different rules. That's what it says. At the bottom, if the clerk of the course considers track conditions are unsuitable for overtaking, the message overtaking will not be permitted. And that is exactly what I've stated. If the track is not safe, you will not be allowed to unlap yourself. You have to continue lapping behind the safety car until such times that it is safe. Because if it is not safe to unlap yourself, it's certainly not safe to be going racing in those conditions. Basic common sense. Basics. We then get presented with an argument that 48.13 overrides the previous order. None of these regulations override one that is earlier in the sequence of regulations. They are all regulations, they all have equal validity, and these in particular are the order of events. If one event isn't carried out, it doesn't mean that the next regulation overrides it. Absolutely not. And that is what Red Bull tried to present as being the situation. 48.13. When the clerk of the course decided it is safe to call in a safety car. So, read that again. When the clerk of the course decides it is safe to call in the safety car, and that is having completed Article 48.12, it has to be done before you apply 48.13. The message safety car in this lap will be sent to all competitors via the official messaging system. Okay? And that's what it goes on to say. We can continue on. 48.14. Each lap completed while the safety car is deployed will be counted. 48.15. If the safety car is still deployed at the beginning of the last lap or is deployed during the last lap, it will enter the pit lane at the end of that lap and the cars will take the end of race signal as normal without overtaking. That is how Abu Dhabi should have finished. No provision to overtake anybody from that moment the safety car was deployed after Latifi crashed. No provision whatsoever to go racing again with lapped cars in situ. No provision whatsoever to manipulate the use of the safety car or change it based on there being this hypothetical situation of a wet day in Spa, which in no way applies to what we saw in Abu Dhabi. Lied to. You've been lied to by this man, by Crofty, by everybody associated with the sport. It all comes down to sporting fairness. The FIA's own international sporting code is written for the purpose of sporting fairness. All the regulations, all the rules of the sport have to be in conjunction and grounded in the context of sporting fairness. And they are all presenting to condition people to accept a fix that they fixed and that Sky Sports have been paid to condition you to accept. It is disgusting. The world needs to wake up to what is truly going on in Formula One. That is the only valid description of what goes on with the safety car. Everything else they describe is lies. So just to address 15.3, the notion of the race director having overriding authority. It says it here, 15.3. The clerk of the course shall work in permanent consultation with the race director. The race director shall have the overriding authority in the following matters, and the clerk of the course may give orders in respect of them only with his express agreement. So the clerk of the course is monitoring the state of the track. He might be the person actually on the ground at the site of the clear-up operation, or in direct communication with the marshals in the set location, finding out exactly the state of the clear-up operation, and then he relays that to the race director, who is also concentrating on everything else that is going on at that moment in time. So the clerk of the course is the race director's eyes on track to ensure that that track is then safe. Okay, but ultimately the race director can override him on the grounds of safety if the race director sees something else elsewhere that he's got concerns about. And therefore, even if the clerk of the course declares that the track is safe in that location, if the race director himself might look at the situation and say, I'm still not happy for things to go racing because, for example, the lapped cars have not caught back up, so the sporting fairness element is not there, or there is heavy rain falling and I don't feel it's safe to go racing again. He has that overriding authority. The overriding discretion is with that race director. And it tells you in point A to E, the control of practice. Okay, and this is all in accordance with the code and sporting regulations. B, the stopping of any car in accordance with the code or sporting regulations. The stopping of practice in accordance with the sporting regulations. D, the starting procedure. E, the use of the safety car. Do you really think that he can use the safety car to freestyle things not in accordance with the sporting code? Everything he does has to be in accordance with the sporting code, the international sporting code, the underlying principles of motorsport. And you want to know what the consequences for that are? Responsibility. Unless stated otherwise, offences or infringements are punishable, whether they were committed intentionally or through negligence. Attempts to commit offences or infringements are also punishable. Any natural or legal person who takes part in an offence or infringement, whether as instigator or as accomplice, is also punishable. That means you, Christian Horner. That means you, Jonathan Wheatley, as well as Massey, who actually perpetrated the fraud, the cheat. Limitation times of prosecution. This is the FIA's own guidelines, but what has taken place is actually a criminal matter. So this is where global law enforcement needs to get involved and take criminal proceedings against the FIA and the sports owners and Sky Sports F1. But even the FIA have got their own time limitations, and that is 5 years. So the clock is ticking. I will also add to this, the 4 stewards in the appeal after the race are also guilty of exactly the same fraud. So these are all liable for this action to be taken against them. The whole world needs to understand what has taken place. They need to understand that they have been lied to about the safety car. This video should explain it to anybody capable of rational thought exactly what the purpose of the safety car truly is, and fully evidences the reasons why. This proves that it's been used corruptly. It proves that Sky Sports have conditioned people to accept or believe that it's possible to use it that way. Please share this to as many people as you can. You need to make them aware of what has truly taken place, and you need to help them become educated about the rules of the sport so that everybody can really understand the fact that it was a fraud that took place in Abu Dhabi 2021, and the perpetrators need to be punished for it.